Hey there, welcome back. Today I would like to talk about the PlayStation because even though it's not the console that I started gaming with, I'm a lot more old school than that. It's still a defining moment when it comes to gaming as an experience. And honestly, one thing that I wanted to show you is this. PlayStation, the console. So of course, as we know, this was came out in 1994, 1995, depending on where in the world you were. But isn't it interesting when we look at like these different models that, this is more of a later model. I don't think you can call it a mini because minis, but you know what a mini PlayStation is, but it's like, what, a small version, compact, what have you. I personally love the original. I always love the original. Call it fat, call it whatever you want, but to me, this is the PlayStation. Not just because of course, nostalgia connection, but also because I just find the design more pleasing to the eye. And it's the same thing with PlayStation 2. And mind you, did you ever meet anyone who actually had a PlayStation 2 standing? I never met any such human in my life. I don't think they exist. Everyone had it horizontal wherever I would go and play. But even between these two, I mean, what the heck is this? I want my consoles to take their space. I want them to be imposing. It needs to look like, wow, that's a technological marvel, if you will. So yeah, PlayStation 2 design, original, the fat, much better looking than the later one. And then, believe it or not, and this might be a little controversial, if you will, but it's the same for me for PlayStation 3. Not to mention, I love the glossy, polished finish. Now, given I understand that, fingerprints and whatnot, what have you, yes, but still, I love the fact that it looks like a freaking oxygen tank. But enough about that. Today, I actually want to talk about the boxes, because I've got them here, of course. This is just one of the several versions of boxes that you had for PlayStation 1. But interestingly enough, one thing that all of them have in common, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that there always is an image that represents the product, because that's what they were trying to do, wasn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, PlayStation and Sony, when it comes to gaming, was the new kid in the block. And they were trying to face, and if you will, massive juggernauts that had been an established long reputation, such as Sega, as Nintendo. So this really needed to convince you. It had all of the stickers, the information, the things, buy, the logos. This is great. Look at the image. It represents the product. But as we move to PlayStation 2, well, this is really famous, isn't it? Here, they just went for the blue box. No image, no picture, nothing. And my opinion is that they went for this much more minimal approach, if you will, apart from the redesigning of the PlayStation logo, is because by now, PlayStation had been such a success that at the end of the day, everyone knew what a PlayStation was, and they knew that people would be crawling and lining up and queuing all night just to get this. They knew it, and this was represented in their marketing strategies. Now, we'll talk about the color in a little bit, because I do want to dive into color scheme and the sort of connection to the way certain colors are chosen by certain companies and why. But really, even if we look at the back of the box, here we just have a couple of games, because they knew that you knew what games were popular, and they're like, yeah, well, we've got more of what you like. Instead, in the original box here, loads of games, because they needed to convince you, no, this is good, we've got a lot of stuff, you don't know us, but we are the great new toy that you don't want to miss. And at the end of the day, one of the greatest things that PlayStation did was to fully focus on 3D, whereas, of course, you had other consoles, such as Sega Saturn, that it was 3D capable, but they were still focusing on trying to render the best 2D experience possible. Sony did understand that that was the market, that was the focus, and that's what they were going to do and focus on. And marketing, in fact, when it comes to budget, was another massive difference. In Europe, and I imagine it's the same in America, every kid had heard of the PlayStation. But Sega Saturn, I don't remember even knowing it existed. And that is because I think they were a bit too overconfident that the people knew what a Sega was, and so they didn't spend as much when it comes to publicity and commercials. And talking about commercials, why are they going for blue with a little yellow accent there? Well, this really has to do with how complementary colors work. I mean, think about The Simpsons. Yellow and blue is all you see. And even now that I just wrote The Simpsons, I didn't even write the colors, that's the predominant contrasting colors or palette that we see. And that was a deliberate choice. Think about it. In the 90s, one of the things that we were doing as kids was called zapping. And what zapping is that you take your remote control and you keep changing channels until you land onto a channel that you think, hey, this interests me. So at the end of the day, what these companies had to do, it was to try and get the customers' attention as quickly as possible, because zapping, it means you only got like 1 or 2 seconds before I change, which means they decided then that the color of the skin of the Simpsons was going to be yellow, because the highest likelihood mathematically for people just randomly jump into an episode was to see the skin of the characters with a background of the sky because of outside scenes. They calculated that and they thought yellow on blue is fantastic because that contrast will immediately attract attention, and then people might stay and decide to stay because of jokes and everything else. Of course, when we talk about complementing colors and contrasting colors, usually you will think of this, which is of course the combination cheat sheet, or we could say the color wheel. And oftentimes blue is countered by orange. These are the opposite colors. So why did they go for a yellow skin, which instead should be complemented by purple? Well, there is something that we do see oftentimes. Look at, for example, Barbarian 2 on Amiga 500. We've got a purple ground and a yellow sky. So it's not that people didn't do it or companies didn't do it, but I think when it comes to light blue and yellow, which is a little bit of a shift, I think it was chosen specifically because instead of working with pigment or paint, they were working with light, also considering CRT technology. And when you work with light, blue and yellow is a fantastic combination. Instead, when you work with paint, I would personally, or pigment, I would personally go for blue and orange. And blue and orange is literally everywhere when it comes to Hollywood. Literally, you can't unsee it. Although it is interesting that when it comes to these complementary colors, sometimes they're 50-50, but most of the times it's going to be a 30%, 70%. Which color is the dominant is kind of irrelevant, kind of depends on what feelings you want to convey. So for instance, look at Brave, their hair is orange, but it only takes about maybe 20% of the picture, and then the rest is blue. Same here with a flaming bat. Here as well, orange seems to be more dominant than blue. Usually one of the two colors in marketing is going to be slightly or even significantly more dominant than the other one, which can even be applied as an accent. Now, why did they go for blue specifically? Why didn't they go with a much more aggressive red, for instance, which is what Nintendo does? Well, one is, I personally think it's because Nintendo does it, but also blue is good because it conveys to the customer subconsciously an idea of intelligence, which is usually connected to science, to technology. That's why you often see blue used in combination with technology. And also it conveys an idea of luxury. So this is something luxurious. It's not a cheap toy. This is good stuff. It's expensive. It's high value. It's well made. I believe that's why they went for blue. And honestly, this rich kind of, cobalt, royal blue, it really spoke to me, and it still does today. In fact, out of these two, this is my favorite box. I think it's the one that looks the best, and I really cherish the fact that I have such a good condition original in my collection of inbox consoles. I have quite a few, so of course this is just episode 1, but I do want to know which one of these two is your favorite box. Do you prefer the original PlayStation, or do you prefer the PlayStation 2 box? And of course, let me know which of these consoles was the one that has more memories for you. Let me know in the comments below, and for today, this is the end of our journey down memory lane, but I will be posting many more soon to come. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.